Hey YouTube, Iuno is finally here, so brace yourself for feet. She's basically fan service incarnate, providing you luscious views of all the good stuff literally whenever you want. Seriously, just go to her character profile and yeah, you'll see. You've got 360-degree views of whatever may please your heart.
Lord have mercy, I'm about to bust.
So, while you're getting a good look or sniff or whatever, I'll teach you about her. My name is Xlice, and in this video, I'll be covering everything you need to know about Iuno and showcasing her power at S0. As usual, WuWa characters have quite a bit of text that usually ends up making you more confused, so we're going directly to the battlefield and providing intuitive, simplified explanations so you don't need to consult the textbook. This is going to be done on the WuWa Media Server, and of course, that means things are subject to change for full release. Let's dive right into the Moon Goddess. First, an introductory clip. This is a normal rotation with Verena, Iuno, Augusta, and Trial, with slight pauses between actions so you can see her action sequence. Sustain setup will come first, then intro with Iuno into an immediate liberation if available, after which she should have full Forte bar. We'll switch modes, consume it with attacks, heavy attack, and then outro out. She's able to basically use 100% of her kit here, and as a sub DPS, her concerto generation is pretty quick. Now, that was a simplified explanation of what her rotation looks like, so now let's break things down step by step. Alright, so as a sub DPS, you will usually set up Iuno with your intro, and your goal is to generate your outro skill as fast as possible. Iuno's kit does this pretty damn efficiently while also maximizing her strongest multipliers and allowing you to use the most of her kit at least once. So first, we enter Lunar State. Either double tap E if you're just trying her out, or use her liberation in a proper rotation. In this state, she's got two modes. Default is going to be ring mode. Basic attacks, E, and dodge counters generate the Forte bar. You can switch states by pressing her space bar. Space will highlight automatically if you're max Forte bar. Other state is going to be bow mode. Attacks in this mode consume Forte bar, deal increased damage, and generate concerto energy a lot faster. She gets 2 charges of her enhanced E to use here, and I typically like to basic plus E weave to consume the bar faster. Usually when your Forte bar is consumed, she's either full concerto or nearly there. It'll be obvious when it's full when her heavy attack lights up. Enhanced heavy attack generates the full moon domain that lasts 25 seconds, restoring HP and stamina to active resonators and granting buff stacks if they gain a shield. Once you use her heavy attack with full concerto, that's your cue to swap to your main DPS. Her outro skill grants the incoming resonator 50% heavy attack amplification for 14 seconds, which ends early if they swap off field. There's also extra text confirming that you can immediately outro once you press her heavy attack to save time, as it won't be interrupted and will complete in full. This type of outro skill is going to be ideal for characters like Augusta or Jianxin, who are heavy attack spammers. But a bit of caution for Jianxin though, which I'll discuss soon in the video. There's some extra buffs that Iuno provides that he can't exactly access. So functionally, that's basically like all of her kit. Get into Lunar State, attack with Ring until full Forte, switch to bow mode, attack and use of the E charges, and then heavy attack when it lights up and swap out. In Overworld, she's also got a bunch of kill wall fun stuff that you can do. Her Lunar State is basically a free hoverboard. Double tap E and zoom across stuff, even over water. Watch out though, it only lasts 15 seconds, and when it runs out, she can't refresh it while over water. Personally, I find it kind of cozy if you just want to roam around with her. And while you're doing this, her sprint turns into kind of a blink, and you can still switch to bow mode with spacebar. Her E charters in bow mode have travel distance, so you can use them like further blinks if you'd like. These all do have a little bit of animation time, and if you're ever curious how long you have left, just look at the tooltip right above her Forte bar. In terms of rotations, we got her normal sub DPS rotation in between your sustain and your main DPS, and also some tips for on-field Iuno gameplay. Going through her base kit, I went over most of it, so this should be pretty familiar now. Normal sub DPS rotation is going to look like this. You're going to enter with her intro, and then you're going to ult right after to start. This does assume you do have her ult on entry, and if you're just shy, you can use a double tap E right after her intro for a little extra energy. Doing intro plus ult gives you 100% of her Forte bar and puts her into Lunar State automatically without using E. Intro is going to get 40% of the bar, and ult gives 60% of the bar. Right after ulting, spacebar will light up. This is your cue to swap modes into bow mode. Then you just blast. Spam her basics and her E's and dodge accordingly until the Forte bar is out and your concerto is basically full. Again, I like to basic E, and basic until concerto is ready. Once your heavy attack lights up, activate it and she's ready to swap out. Now, if you're on field Iuno, everything is basically the same, except once you use her heavy attack, you can choose to stay on field. After you use heavy attack, it will forcibly end her Lunar State. So all you do is simply double tap her E again, and then you're back in. Then you can spam the ring attacks until full Forte, spacebar to swap, and then spam bow attacks until Forte is depleted. Rinse and repeat until you're satisfied. Alright, so now you should know how to play her. Let's go through what buff she gets and Forte priority. Top Forte node is going to give 5 stacks of Blessing of Wand Light per intro and liberation. This caps at 10 stacks. I'll shorthand this to light stacks. Each light stack gives 4% all damage amp for 10 seconds, so 10 stacks is 40% damage amp. She herself will instantly get 10 from intro plus liberation combo, and other resonators may also gain light stacks themselves, which we'll get into shortly. Middle Forte gives her an unstackable mini shield on any attack she deals, which is nearly identical to the one that Augusta has, and this one also does not transfer to teammates on swap. The main use for this will be, of course, activating her signature weapon's passive ability for lots of ignore defense. And just like Augusta, Iuno has her own domain expansion through her enhanced heavy attack. This is called the Full Moon Domain, and it grants HP and stamina restoration to resonators inside, and also gives the resonator light stacks if they generate a shield. This is the only way other resonators can gain light stacks, so essentially this is just limited to Augusta. Other units like Brant can generate a shield, but only one per their entire rotation. So as far as I'm aware, Augusta is the only other character able to constantly generate shields for this purpose. It's pretty gimmicky since basically only Iuno and Augusta share these shield mechanics. And circling back to GN, he unfortunately will not be able to access any of these light stacks, but he still will benefit off of that outro skill. This means, to no one's surprise, Iuno is specifically Augusta's best teammate. Go figure. And then the rest of her Forte stats are going to give her crit rate and attack percent. For Forte priority, we're going to prioritize Forte circuit first, then liberation, and then skill, basic, intro. If you're on field, then you do Forte circuit, liberation, basic, and then resident skill intro. This is an order of total multiplier value that you'll get per rotation. Forte circuit basically handles everything in bow mode. So these are the bow attacks, all the enhanced bow attacks, and then also the enhanced E charges. Just the bow mode, just this attack itself, does about 45k times 2 twice. Liberation will come second with around a 150k nuke. After that, resident skill, basic, and intro skill are basically just used once or not at all during sub DPS rotation. Since we intro into liberation into lunar bow mode instantly, we skip the setup that you would normally use for normal attacks and resident skill. Now, if you're on field, then basic attack now becomes third most valuable since you'll be in ring mode more often. Resident skill and intro are just basically one-off abilities. Alright, so before we jump into her build details, let's talk about her sequence nodes. Like usual, the first 2 sequence nodes are on the table even for F2Ps, assuming you have the currency. S1, plus 40% attack during lunar state, 1 energy per second generation for liberation while she's in her own domain. Bow mode E charges and enhanced heavy attack become immune to interruption. So this is pretty expected. We have a raw attack gain and mostly quality of life. S2, 10 light stacks now grants 40% additional all damage amplification up to 80%. Guess who's the only resonator currently by her side herself to use this? That's right, Augusta. S3, basically all bow mode damage gets 1.65 final damage increase. There's also a little bit of quality of life on her enhanced E charges that they don't interrupt attack flow. This allows you to better weave the basic plus E cancel. S4, enhanced heavy attack now grants a team-wide unstackable shield for 30 seconds. S5, 20% liberation damage bonus. All of her important damage counts as liberation, so this is basically a 10 to 12% unconditional DPS increase. And then finally, S6, enhanced heavy attack now gains a 16x final damage multiplier increase, basically dealing 16 times more damage. Using it now fully resets bow mode, allowing you to do her entire big DPS combo again, including the E charges. There is no cooldown for this specific refresh, but it is tied to her heavy attack cooldown, which is 25 seconds, meaning you'll be able to do this once per rotation. Overall, Iuno's sequence nodes are a mix between quality of life and personal damage. She does get some final damage increases for herself, but she doesn't truly become an S6 on-field DPS that you can rely on. She's still ideal in a rotational swap, with S6 extending it twice as long. Best teammate will still be Augusta, as she's currently the only resonator who can use S2. Alright, now let's talk about her weapons. So, she's a gauntlet user, an attack scaler, and benefits from crit rate, crit damage, and liberation damage bonus. Her signature is just like Augusta's. Moongazer's Sigil. 500 base attack, a 36% crit rate, attack percent passive, has 20% liberation damage bonus, and up to 36% lib damage def ignore at max stacks. This is fine-tuned to her and should be no surprise. 36% crit rate is going to make it very easy to get a decent crit ratio on her and makes her 4-cost choice flexible depending on your needs. Total stat from the passives, excluding the secondary stat, is roughly 78% including the def ignore. Now let's go to the gallery and look at other options for gauntlets that she could possibly use. We have Xiangli Yao's Verity's Handle. This is a very similar weapon with slightly lower crit rate, 12% all damage bonus, and 48% lib damage bonus. Total stat you'll be getting from this is 60%. Then we have one of two Battle Pass weapons. First is Ether Strike. This has crit damage secondary, 7.2% attack, and 10.8% liberation damage bonus. Total stat is 18% at R1, and then up to 57.5% at R5. Then we have the other Battle Pass, the Stonard. This has crit rate secondary and 8% lib damage bonus. Total stat is 18% at R1 and 54% at R5. And then finally, we have Celestial Spiral. This is basically a generic attack percent stat stick and energy quality of life. 10 to 20% stat from R1 to R5. So overall, I think Iuno's weapon choices, besides her signature weapon, are a bit limited if you don't have Xiangliao's signature weapon or the Battle Pass Stonard or Ether Strike. Xiangliao's is a great choice, with very similar stat distribution and about an 18% stat loss. The Battle Pass gives you access to either Ether Strike or Stonard, which both have near identical stat distribution. Ether Strike is 40 crit damage on the secondary stat, and Stonard is 20% crit rate secondary, so they'll require the opposite forecast main stat for a decent crit ratio. If you plan to invest in Augusta Iuno duo, but don't have any of these three weapons that I mentioned, then I would suggest pulling for the signature weapon. Now let's cover her echoes. So technically she is a sub DPS, but her best in slot echo set will remain the 3-piece Crown of Valor and 2-piece arrow damage combo. Just like Augusta, she constantly generates a mini shield, so 3-piece Crown is giving 30% attack and 20% crit damage at max stacks. This is worth a lot more than a stereotypical supportive set, especially since she does a lot of damage on her own. Now, if you don't have enough pieces currently, you can get by with a standard 5-piece Sierra Gale set for a generic 40% arrow damage bonus, or a 5-piece Moonlit Clouds to buff Augusta with 22.5% attack. Now, assuming you have a best in slot, the main forecast echo will be Lady of the Sea for the arrow damage bonus and liberation damage bonus. Her optimal build is going to be 433, but 4-4 is a viable alternative. She doesn't really suffer that much from lack of crit rate since gauntlet weapons provide a decent amount, so 433 will end up being best in slot over time. For main stats, forecast echoes will either be crit rate or crit damage depending on your weapon selection. Crit rate weapons can run crit damage forecast like here, and then vice versa. If you have crit damage weapon, you can run crit rate forecast. For 3-cost echoes, either arrow damage or attack percent will work just fine. With the Valor 3-piece, supports, outro skill buffs, and attack percent echo substats, her damage bonus will be fairly lacking in most situations, so prioritize arrow damage bonus in both slots. For substats, aim for a good balance of crit rate, crit damage, and energy regen. Then grab attack and liberation damage bonus as necessary. For me personally, I noticed that even on 130 plus ER builds, she sometimes doesn't have her ult up perfectly on each rotation. This is mitigated by using an extra E at the beginning, but if you have enough substats, you can avoid that altogether and just intro ult right away. If you're okay with extending her rotation just about an extra second by always using her E after her intro, then 110 to 115 ER should be enough. Alright, so now onto a quick stat check. As a reminder, these are media server echoes with fixed crit rate, crit damage, attack, and ER. So this build will have a lot higher attack on average with the extra 10% on each piece. Crit rolls, as you guys can see, are all min rolled, so this is the lowest bound, assuming every piece is at least double crit. So with these echoes, these are her stats. She has 2.4k attack, 80% crit rate, 257 crit damage, and 134 energy regen. On live servers, you can expect to drop the attack to about 2.2k because you probably won't have attack percent substats on every single piece. For crit rate, 80 to 85% is pretty good margin, 250 to 275 crit damage should be expected, and 120-ish energy regen. This is of course with her signature providing 36% crit rate, so if you have a lower crit scaling weapon, I would say drop the stat expectation on the crit by about 5 to 10% on crit rate and about 10 to 20% on crit damage. Team synergies. So there really isn't much to talk about here since she's basically Augusta's best friend. But in general, we're effectively just replacing Mortefi on all supported teams. Iuno is now de facto strongest heavy attack buffing sub DPS, even if you don't have this shield generation or her light stacks. She also does a massive amount of damage herself within her relatively short rotation and has a pretty self-sufficient kit. So characters like Jianxin main DPS and future heavy attack DPS will benefit from her. If you like to run on-field DPS Iuno, she's primarily arrow and liberation damage bonus, so you're going to want arrow or lib buffing outro skills. We currently only have 2 characters that satisfy this requirement fully, Aalto and Jianxin. If you're okay with Jianxin's slower playstyle, then combining both Jianxin and Iuno will be fairly synergistic. Aalto Aalto is a generic arrow sub DPS buffer, so he can be used if you want to try her out. So the team that you're looking at here is going to be her best in slot. It's Augusta in Iuno duo with Shorekeeper or Verena. The rotation is pretty straightforward. You're always going to sustain setup first, then swap into Iuno, then Augusta, and then repeat. It's a pretty autopilot rotation that doesn't need that much thought, and you can incorporate quick swap on basically everything except Augusta's outro skill, but remember, she won't get Crown of Wills if you do that. If you instead plan on playing Iuno on field, all you gotta do is swap out Augusta for a support that benefits Iuno, like we mentioned, Aalto or Jianxin or something else. And then you would push Iuno's rotation last. So it'd be sustained into that flex slot, and then Iuno would be on the right side here. All right, now onto some showcases. So I've got 2 full showcases for you guys and 2 demonstrations of main DPS focused Iuno with less common supports. First, a comparison between S6 Mortefi plus Augusta duo and also Iuno and Augusta. This will be the most common question I think most people will have regarding her strength, not only for Augusta's damage increase, but also how strong Iuno herself is in the team. Then we have 2 demonstrations of rotations with Aalto and Jianxin with Iuno as the main DPS. These showcases will be done on WuWa Media Server, and just a reminder that the bosses that I'm showcasing on WuWa are not indicative of live server, so enemies may not correlate with what you'd actually face. Alright, so first up we got our baseline S6 Mortefi and Augusta comp. There's no Iuno here, we're just soft testing damage and total clear time before we run with Iuno for comparison purposes. All runs are going to be against the Fallacy boss. Things are pretty standard here, we're leading SK setup into Mortefi setup into Augusta. So just need to build up Concerto energy, now it's ready, make sure to echo, and then Augusta's in. Alright, so building towards the enhanced E. Now it's up. Into real ultimate. So base slashes with all buffs are 20.8k. With the final slash, dealing 156k. So this is going to be the end of the first rotation. We're about 1/3 of the boss HP down with 30 seconds used.
Fury boils.
So it's probably going to take 3 full rotations to down the boss here.
Inferno.
Usually the time loss in these runs comes with the sub DPS setup, so Iuno's going to help a lot with her faster setup. Second troll's coming in here. Gonna enhanced E. There we go. Alright, so 20.8k slashes again. Second true ult 156k.
Oath from the heart.
We are about 80% of the boss's HP here.
I engraft you new.
And then finally one more rotation.
Burn to ashes. As you wish.
3 minutes and 50 some seconds left. We just need one more rotation from Augusta. There it is.
This is my moment.
Unfortunately, I do have to charge up her base ultimate here to get enough of her line. Alright, so ultimate sent, double E, now enhance C. So obviously, in this particular case, we probably could have optimized a little bit, because when we're activating Trolled here, the boss is already dead. But yeah, so it's going to take about a minute 15, a minute and 25 seconds with the standard S6 Mortefi comp. All right, next up, we've got our proper Iuno plus Augusta showcase here. Everyone is S0. We're looking for a comparison to the Mortefi comp. That one cleared in about 1 minute 30 seconds. A little bit of a hate there, but it's okay. All right, we're set up. We swap into Iuno here. Really quickly intro into ultimate. And then spacebar instantly. She had about 150k there. We used up our basic and both of our E charges. And you can see how fast her outro charges, and there, we're already done. So really, it only takes about 7 seconds to get her stuff ready. And then we're already on Augusta now. She's just about to run her true ultimate. And we haven't even used her ultimate. We're already 1/3 of the boss in, and it's 30 seconds in. Alright, real ultimate. 23.9k slashes. Final hit. 179k. So this is one rotation with Iuno Augusta. We are over 55% of the boss HP down. He's about to also have his breakbar down as well. Alright, so here it is. I'm prepping. There we go. Iuno's intro. Charging up her ultimate.
The moon is full.
Now we're sending. 152k
Praise me.
into her double E charges. Really fast outer generation. You guys can see the outro, for outro circle, how quickly the concerto energy generates. Already on Augusta now, 1 minute in, and it's basically guaranteed dead here. We're just charging up for her real ultimate, and then boom. So just between these two, this is pretty significant upgrade, but I think this is to be expected for you guys. Augusta's personal damage does increase by about, I would say, 17% or so. But the main benefit is that Iuno herself does a massive amount of damage. And now we're going to transition into main DPS. And I want to show you guys a little bit of showcases here. All right, so now we're on to some main DPS showcases. You guys can see that we have a Jianxin plus Iuno plus Shorekeeper. Jianxin is a liberation damage outro skill. So it does benefit Iuno here. So we're going to extend Iuno's rotation just a little bit. Alright, the charging up outro skill for Jianxin is going to take the longest time here. I'm using her charge attack, and right when we get that second bar, boom. Now liberation onto Iuno, and the damage output here, 212k. So a pretty big difference from being sub DPS. Sub DPS we're doing about 150k, but now that she's main DPS, she's careening over 200,000. And then when you do her E charges, we'll do about 65 to 70k each. We extend her rotation, and then we go back into Shorekeeper. And you guys can see that the damage output's not bad. I mean, considering that we had Mortefi Augusta about the same time here, 30-second total rotation, and about 1/3 to about 40% of the boss HP down. So it's going to take us 3 full rotations to kill here. And the longest part of this rotation is going to be Jianxin's concerto energy generation. All right, so it's ready. Now we're back onto Iuno's second rotation here. Ultimate 212k again. E charges doing 66k times 2. Use them both. Extend her rotation just a little bit longer than heavy attack and switch back to Shorekeeper. So I actually used her rotation a little bit longer than intended. We did not get Shorekeeper's intro, but that's totally fine. I do a little bit of early swapping for Jianxin because I noticed that her concerto energy takes a bit longer, and using that extra E early on actually saves me a little bit of time. So charging up the heavy attack here, hoping the boss comes back, which it does. Have intro skill. And then Iuno's ready. And then final rotation. 60k ease. And then it's dead. So this composition with Jianxin and Iuno does take a little bit of practice. I did a couple of runs before I actually finished this run. But you guys can see the clear time is about 1 minute and 30 seconds, which is not bad. All right, so now we're on to a different composition, the final one. This is with Aalto and Iuno. Aalto's outro skill is arrow damage bonus. So this is quite nice. It benefits all of Iuno's kit. The playstyle is a little bit wonky, as you guys will soon see. Alright, so it's typical setup with Shorekeeper here. Just demonstrating you guys a little bit of different playstyles. This is with Iuno, main DPS on the second one. Okay, so now we're on to Aalto. Dodge counter, set up both his R and his E. And once his Forte bar is full, we're going to try to dash through these things to get his extra procs off, which generate a little bit of Concerto. Concerto's ready, going into Iuno, then Liberation. So Liberation damage clocks in at 224k, so you'll notice it's a little bit higher than with Jianxin. And my E's are consistently about 70,000 now. Overall, the rotation takes about the same amount of time. It's 30 seconds for both. It's just a little bit stronger in damage from Iuno. And just to be clear, this is S6 Aalto. So that chip damage is going to be adding up a little bit. He also does have a taunt with his E, which is quite nice. Yeah, look at that. So his little clone there took all of the bullet damage. Now we have Echo skill into Outro, into Iuno. 231k, that's the highest margin that we've seen so far. Her E's are 69.8k. Extending her rotation just a little bit. Make sure to heavy attack and then Outro with into Shorekeeper. The time for this team comp is very functionally similar to Jianxin's comp. It's just that this comp does a little bit more damage than that one because of the buff damage and also Aalto's damage. So we're going to have about a 5 to 10 second faster clear just because our rotation is slightly shorter.
The moon is full.
Yeah, and we did in fact miss Iuno's Liberation there. which would have saved us probably another 3 to 4 seconds, but it's totally fine. Things like that happen. But yeah, so those 3 full rotations is all that we need, which is pretty good. Showcases are now done. So overall, Iuno Augusta is going to be the strongest damage output, pretty unsurprising. Compared to the original Mortefi Augusta comp, the rotation increase is significant, upwards of about 40%. Iuno main DPS teams weren't too shabby either, especially considering the supports that I used. S6 Aalto and S0 Jianxin are 1.0 characters that are definitely outclassed by modern characters, but even then, Iuno's damage output as a main DPS is still decent. So that's gonna wrap up this comprehensive guide on Iuno. Is she worth to pull? Well, first off, she's great to look at. If that's important to you, then she's a no-brainer. Also, she has pretty heavy Ishtar coding in JP voice if you're familiar with that character. And of course, if you invested in Augusta, she's basically her bestie. Besides that though, I think her strength as a sub DPS is very potent. Very fast rotation, can flex as a main or sub DPS depending on your needs, and has massive multipliers that allow impressive damage no matter what role she's in. If you're more casual, even just roaming around with her on her flying saucer is a very cozy experience. But that's gonna wrap things up. If this video helped you out, I'd appreciate a like and sub to show YouTube that you enjoyed the video. And if you know someone who's interested in Iuno, maybe this video could help them out. I stream every night on Twitch at twitch.tv/Xlice, so if you want to ask questions, hang out, or chill, I'm knee deep in a variety of gacha games, so yeah. Let me know in the comments what you think about her. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.